Yeah, go ahead. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Okay, Prabhu is here now. Thank you, Anand Ridhima. Hare Krishna Sureshwar Prabhu. We're waiting for you.
Okay, now you can hear me, huh?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Yes. Can you see me yet?
No, we cannot see you just yet.
Good, I'm still putting my kurta on. Welcome to Zoom world.
Right.
Oh, Krishna. Okay, here, let me, all right. Okay. Haribol, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Boy, it's been a while, a few weeks, I think. Oh. All right, I'm going to bring up my script. And here we go. Where'd it go? I got to put my headphones on too. Okay, you can probably hear me better now, yeah?
Yes, Prabhu.
Oh, good. Okay. There just aren't enough hours in the day. So here we are. It's getting really warm here in Tucson. What's your temperature in Nashville?
Currently it's 68, but we've had very inclement weather one day and then really, really nice weather the next. So it's perfect for tornadoes.
That's right. You had tornadoes and floods. My God, and you're surviving. That's great. All the Vaishnavas are hale and hearty. Anybody get hurt or anything?
So everyone is safe and sound.
Oh, great. Okay. Well, it's great to be back after a few weeks. And yeah, I'm going to do that lesson that I inadvertently skipped called his Varnashram Challenge. Somehow I gave you the one after that twice and nobody said anything. So that's pretty amazing. All right. So yeah, great to be with you. Varnashram Challenge. So between 1965 and 1977, Srila Prabhupada wrote dozens of books, opened up over 100 centers, and initiated thousands of disciples worldwide. By 1977, his nonstop sacrifice had taken its toll on his body. Returning to Vrindavan to continue translating Sanskrit texts about Krishna into English, Prabhupada observed that his days on earth were numbered. When a disciple later asked if His Divine Grace had any regrets, Prabhupada acknowledged he had, quote, one lamentation. That you have not finished translating the Srimad Bhagavatam? No, that I have not established Varnashram. Now that quote was not recorded, but it came from an interview that was not published with His Grace Abhiram Prabhu, my godbrother, who was serving as Prabhupada's nurse, his medical attendant, throughout much of 1977. So I have to stop and ask, does this sound, did I give this or not? I don't think I did. Can anybody say that they've heard me give that introduction before to the lesson?
It's new to, I think it's new to all of us, Prabhu.
Okay, great. Okay, so I did skip it. I mean, I'm giving it so much to different audiences, I just forget. Okay. So that was, what Prabhupada said. That was his one lamentation. And it wasn't that he hadn't finished the Bhagavatam, which was a good guess, because that's what Prabhupada did everywhere he went. Whether it was Toronto or Timbuktu, he was getting up at midnight and translating. That timeless culture, which shepherds us from the material to the spiritual realm, Varnashram appears repeatedly in Prabhupada's teachings. Yet Prabhupada had been so busy spreading the Hare Krishna movement, he scarcely had time to demonstrate Varnashram's practical application in the modern age. Indeed, only in the last years of his life did he identify Varnashram's social, spiritual benefits as the key to attracting humanity en masse to Krishna. Quote, "This is the next aspect of Krishna consciousness which I wish to push forward. On these farms, we can demonstrate the full Varnashram system. If these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness. In the cities, we are interested for preaching, but we cannot present the ideal Varnashram system. This is possible only at the farms, so they are very important." So that was a letter excerpts from Srila Prabhupada to Hari Sharidas, as recorded in TKG's diary on the 10th of August, 1977. Despite the importance Prabhupada gave to Varnashram, his followers have been slow to embrace this most challenging aspect of his mission. To understand why and what to do now, we first need to recognize the different ways Prabhupada used the term Varnashram. Okay, so now we're going to look at 4 ways that Prabhupada used that term, Varnashram. And most people don't know this, that he used the term in 4 different ways. Number 1, Vedic Varnashram. According to India's Vedic literature, Krishna consciousness once flourished all over the world with a culture that was at once scientific and spiritual, down to earth and out of this world. Developing their natural vocations, or varnas, and transcending them in stages, or ashrams, people found harmony and fulfillment working together to please Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Bhagavad Gita 4:13, Lord Krishna famously teaches, quote, "According to the 3 modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the 4 divisions of human society are created by me," unquote. So as the parts of the body work together to serve the whole, in Varnashram, 4 broad vocational groups cooperate to serve the social body. In Vedic times, the guardians of that cooperation were samskaras, sacred rites of passage through stages of spiritual progress. Prior to conceiving a child, for example, cultured people meditated on the divine, well aware that life comes from life and that the quality of their progeny would reflect the quality of their consciousness, especially at conception. Quote, that is Vedic civilization, Prabhupada observed. Samskar before the birth and immediately after the birth, then one after another. Marriage is also another samskar. These are dasha vida samskar, 10 purificatory rites. But where is samskar going on today? Nobody takes care of samskar. Still, they are declaring that I am Brahman, highborn. Therefore, the conclusion is, Kalo Shudra Sambhavaha. Everyone is lowborn. So that was an excerpt from a morning walk Prabhupada gave on the 10th of April, 1974 in Bombay. Indeed, the modern chaos reflects the general quality of the world's population. As if born of a bottle of beer on Saturday night. The sacred act that once called souls to enter the world to revive their love of God is today routinely reduced to a contact sport, hostile to its natural outcome, conception. Indeed, those who make it into a womb today often don't make it out alive. As much as Prabhupada liked to present Krishna consciousness as the positive alternative to modern civilization, he knew the days of classic Vedic Varnashram, the days of yore, he called them, were gone. To spread Krishna consciousness everywhere in modern times would require a special adaptation of Varnashram culture, according to, quote, time, candidate, and country, unquote. So that's the first way Prabhupada used the term, Vedic, traditional Vedic, once upon a time, thousands of years ago. Number 2, dormant Varnashram. And these are my terms. It's not that Prabhupada neatly listed the ways he talked about Varnashram, but this is what we've discovered in our Varnashram research. So dormant, sleeping, latent, potential. Dormant Varnashram. Though classic Varnashram may be gone, its dormant realities endure, awaiting activation. For example, despite utopian attempts to make humanity classless, by nature, classes remain. Speaking with a Russian professor in Moscow during the Soviet era, Prabhupada compared Varnashram to the sun. So this is an actual quote from the room conversation that Prabhupada had with Professor Kotovsky in Moscow. Quote, Prabhupada's talking, so sunshine is here in America, in Russia, in India, everywhere. Similarly, this Varnashram system is prevalent everywhere in some form or other. Just like the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas means the most intelligent class of men. Brain of the society. Then the Kshatriyas, the administrator class. Then the Vaishyas, the productive class. And the Shudras, the worker class. These 4 classes are everywhere, present in different names. And because it is creation by the original creator, it is prevalent everywhere. Varnashram. So that was a conversation with Professor Grigory Kotovsky, 22nd June 1971 in Moscow. So the professor was speaking with Srila Prabhupada. The professor speaking with Srila Prabhupada was an intellectual. Others in his school were administrators, still others workers, and so on. By divine design, different classes of people exist, not to exploit, but to cooperate with one another. Oblivious of that design, materialistic classes clash and suffer. The equality we seek fully blossoms in devotional service, where all classes are valued as servants of the Supreme. When these values are forgotten, the Lord's natural Varnashram order becomes corrupted, as India's history shows. So now we look at the third way Prabhupada referred to Varnashram. It's a materialistic way. I call it materialistic Varnashram. Quote, the vitiated means corrupted, the vitiated caste system of present India is never sanctioned by the scriptures. Prabhupada wrote Indian Deputy Prime Minister Dr. Sardar Patel. He was number 2 right under Nehru in the late 40s. Quote, but the caste system is made by God according to quality and work of the subject, and it was never designed for the benefit of accidental birthright. Okay, unquote. Corrupt Brahmins claiming power and privilege based on birth have obscured the truth and beauty of India's original Varnashram culture. Though typecast by the nature we acquire at birth, by engaging in devotional service, we can rise above nature's modes to realize our spiritual potential by cooperatively serving the Lord. Lacking loving service, too often we compete and bargain with one another. We treat God like Santa Claus, the great order supplier, and run a ritualistic race to heaven. East or West, such materialistic religion wearies us as it wearies God. It's love we're all after, intimate exchanges of selfless service, the spirit of divine Varnashram culture. And that's the fourth way Prabhupada would use Varnashram we're going to look at now. This is the kind of Varnashram, this last one that Prabhupada was interested in for the world, beginning with ISKCON. 4, Varnashram for modern times. Varnashram that elevates us from material to spiritual consciousness is called Daivi, or divine. Prabhupada's Daivi Varnashram for modern times includes 4 essential features. 1, pure devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the goal of life. 2, local land and cow economics as the model for sustainable living. 3, ashram colleges for vocational and spiritual retraining. And 4, the introduction of Daivi Varnashram principles according to, quote, time, candidate, and country. Borrowing a phrase from the British poet Wordsworth, Prabhupada sometimes referred to Daivi Varnashram as, quote, plain living and high thinking. That was a phrase of Wordsworth's that Prabhupada adopted to describe Daivi Varnashram, plain living and high thinking. When Krishna descended to earth, he himself lived this way in the rural village of Vrindavan as a boy, and later in clean and green Dwarka city as a youthful prince. If we could show the world a better way to live, Prabhupada reasoned, everyone would eventually take the Daivi Varnashram journey home. Prabhupada's vision was the fruit of a lifetime of preaching. But since most modern Hare Krishna people don't live the way Krishna lives, we've been slow to understand how Prabhupada's application of Varnashram to ISKCON evolved over time. So now that we've looked at the 4 ways that Prabhupada used the phrase Varnashram, we're going to look at the way Prabhupada applied Varnashram to ISKCON differently over 3 phases of time. 3 applications. Number 1, forget Varnashram. And this is ironic because for the majority of Prabhupada's preaching Leela, say from 1966 to 1973, this is what Prabhupada was saying about Varnashram. Forget it. From 1966 to 1973, the majority of his global preaching years, Srila Prabhupada often dismissed Varnashram as impractical. And here's an example. Quote, therefore, this is the panacea to engage everyone in Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna. This is the only remedy. Now, you cannot again introduce this system of Varnashram. That was in a lecture in LA in December 68, a Gita lecture. So he's calling the chanting the panacea, and don't try to, bring back Varnashram. While he was launching ISKCON, Prabhupada's priority was to put a head back on society. Quote, at the present moment, the society is headless, a dead body, or head cracked, crazy. There is head, nonsense head. What is the use of nonsense head? Therefore, there was a great necessity of creating a class who will act as brain and head. That is Krishna consciousness movement. So that was, Prabhupada said that in a 4th of July lecture, 1970 in San Francisco. Since Brahmins are the head of the Varnashram social body, as much as possible, Prabhupada was engaging his disciples in Brahminical activities. Chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping in the temple, studying and distributing his books, staging spiritual festivals, and so on. For the most part, this strategy worked, but not always, as this exchange with an early follower illustrates. So this happened very early on, it was 1966, at the storefront in 26 2nd Avenue, and there was one person coming around. It was a rather passionate fellow named Raphael. This is an excerpt from the Lilamrita. Quote, one day after a lecture, Raphael approached the Swami, stood beside the dais, and spoke up, exasperated, impatient. Quote, I am not meant to sit in a temple and chant on beads. My father was a boxer. I am meant to run on the beach and breathe in big breaths of air. Unquote. Raphael went on, gesticulating and voicing his familiar complaints, things he would rather do than take up Krishna consciousness. Suddenly, Prabhupada interrupted him in a loud voice. Then do it! Do it! Prabhupada is calling his bluff. Raphael shrank away, but he stayed. Not forever, but he did stay for a little longer. And most did stay in those heady days of spiritual revolution, pleased with the counterculture youth flocking to his clarion call to chant Hare Krishna. Prabhupada still wanted to give Krishna consciousness to everyone, including people who would not chant. Soon Krishna would set the world stage to help Prabhupada make Varnashram culture more accessible and urgent, starting with his own followers. So from 66 to 73, Prabhupada was telling us to forget it. just we need to create Brahmins here to put a head back into society. So that's what he was trying to do with us. And it worked for the most part in the beginning. Okay, so phase two. Phase two, I call the world needs Varnashram. And you'll see why from the history here. In 1973, owing to artificial manipulation of the oil supply in the Middle East, the modern world experienced a, quote, energy crisis. High fuel prices, long fuel lines, and violence dramatized the folly of a civilization that runs on finite fossil fuels. Amidst the angst, Srila Prabhupada saw an opportunity. Walking and talking with leading disciples the following spring, Prabhupada noted that if we could show the public a better way to live, they would be more inclined to listen to Krishna. Quote, this is Prabhupada, because if the people are in chaos, how will they be able to accept the great philosophy? It requires cool brain. That was from a morning walk, 14th March 74, Vrindavan. Indeed, a brain nourished by fresh milk and from protected cows, Prabhupada wrote, quote, can assimilate the subtle form of spiritual knowledge, unquote. That's an excerpt from Light of the Bhagavat, the book that he never saw published, but was published later after he left this world. That was from Light of the Bhagavat, text 27. To show the world a better way to live, Prabhupada's followers would have to learn and teach the fundamentals of Varnashram culture. Quote, a Varnashram college has to be established immediately, Prabhupada declared. Everywhere, wherever we have got our center, a Varnashram college should be established. That was a morning walk, 12th March, 74 in Vrindavan. The devotees were astonished. Why was Prabhupada reversing his attitude toward Varnashram? But as they continued to walk with him, they began to understand his new direction as an extension of his compassion. Quote, devotee, personally, he has no problem, but he pushes himself in this degraded society to teach how to live, how to become gentlemen. Otherwise, we have no business. But if we don't give them the opportunity, they'll not be able to come to Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada saw Varnashram as a stepping stone to Krishna consciousness. He even says that in the purport to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 32. So that was an excerpt from a morning walk for the 14th of March, 2 days later, 74 in Vrindavan. Since devotees are already with Krishna, Prabhupada continued, they don't need Varnashram, but humanity needs Varnashram to learn how to live and come to Krishna. It wasn't long before Prabhupada would further extend his compassion by telling the devotees how much they too needed Varnashram, humanity's, quote, stepping stone for spiritual understanding. There's the reference, Gita 231 purport. So that's phase two. Let's do Varnashram for the world's sake. And now, phase three. And phase three is basically Prabhupada's last year with us on earth. On February 14th, 1977, in his quarters in Mayapur, India, Srila Prabhupada reminded the devotees how important it was for them to inspire and educate people by following Varnashram principles. When a disciple pointed out that Lord Chaitanya dismissed Varnashram as, quote, external, Prabhupada replied, quote, well, our position is different. Our duty is that we shall arrange the external affairs all so nicely that one day they will come to the spiritual platform very easily, paving the way, unquote. When another disciple wondered why devotees who were already on the spiritual platform, beyond the designations of Varna and Ashram, should follow Varnashram principles, Prabhupada challenged his assumption. Quote, Varnashram should be established to become Vaishnav. It is not so easy to become Vaishnav. If to become Vaishnav is so easy, why so many fall down? It is not easy to become Vaishnav. Unquote. The longer Prabhupada preached in the West, the more he saw how even his own followers would need the Varnashram bridge to come to Krishna. As his life on earth was drawing to a close, Prabhupada knew that building the bridge, a bridge the whole world could cross, would be a great challenge. And now I should give you a heads up that we're coming toward the end of the talk. So please start thinking about questions and comments. So let's look finally at, as I call the lesson, his Varnashram challenge. In lesson 5, we saw how Srila Prabhupada expanded the Hare Krishna movement in phases, whereas earlier phases focused on Brahminical concerns and activities, holy names and holy books, temples and deity worship, initiation and congregation. The Varnashram phase invites everyone to help build a spiritual society, not just Brahminical types. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, texts 8 through 10, Lord Krishna makes a similarly progressive pitch. Quote, just fix your mind on me, he advises the advanced listener. For the less advanced, the Lord then recommends the disciplines of devotional yoga. Quote, in this way you will develop a desire to attain me. So that's where most of us are. We're practicing the rules and regulations of bhakti to get a desire to attain Krishna. And for those not ready to follow strict vows, Krishna recommends working for him. In his commentary to text 10, Prabhupada reaches out to all kinds of readers. Quote, okay, let's see here. I'm trying to edit as I go, but my computer is freezing up on me here. Quote, there are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. See who Prabhupada's reaching out to? Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra types, not just Brahmins. What can a Brahmin? A Brahmin has vision. He's a visionary. He can give the idea, the vision, but he's just a talking head unless he has the cooperation of people who have governance skills and people who are resourceful, Vaishyas, people who are hardworking, laborers. Prabhupada, he continues in this purport, this voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love of God, whereupon one becomes perfect. So everybody can benefit by participating in the Varnashram, Daivi Varnashram project to spread Krishna consciousness. Where most people live in or near cities, it is natural to engage them in building temples to attract everyone to Krishna. At the same time, the modern urge to live a simpler, more natural way of life will find fulfillment the more devotees engage people in building spiritual communities that live the way Krishna lives. And we'll give you a nice example here. This is a quote from Prabhupada's one and only visit to Gitanagari in July 1976. He arrived in the afternoon and he gave a talk in the evening, and then he stayed overnight, and he left the next day. Quote, so this Krishna consciousness movement is trying to revive village organization, as you are trying here. This is really what, when Prabhupada says farms, don't just think farmers, but think of the whole village. That is agricultural based, but it shows the whole range of simple living occupations. As you are trying here. Krishna in his natural life is a village boy in Vrindavan. Vrindavan is a village, but it does not mean that we shall avoid city life or town life. No, everything, every place is Krishna's place. Everywhere there should be Krishna consciousness. Lecture 15 July 76, Gitanagari village. Srila Prabhupada's Vedic Varnasrama village holds the keys to unlock the modern eco challenge. So a big door to Krishna consciousness these days is the whole, ecology movement, the whole environmental movement. And we're behind the curve on this. We should be the leaders in this, because Prabhupada told us, almost 50 years ago to do this, but we've been slow to accept the challenge. Okay, and here's a quote again about Prabhupada's vision. Quote, if these farms become successful, then the whole world will be enveloped by Krishna consciousness, unquote. And since the Varnashram College holds the blueprints to the village, quote, the Varnashram College has to be established immediately, everywhere, wherever we have got our center, unquote. Town or country, reviving divine Varnashram culture will illumine our natural place in Krishna's world. And by appreciating one another as his eternal servants, we will find the freedom, equality, and happiness we seek in this life and the next. Now, having seen the scope of Srila Prabhupada's Varnashram vision, okay, I say here, in lesson 7, which we've already done twice, we'll look at how to find our individual mission in his missions, which is what we looked at before. So the actual next lesson, next Tuesday, will be, we're going to move into the Prayojana phase of this Founder Acharya series, where we deepen our love for Prabhupada, and it's called To Love Is to Cooperate. All right, so Hare Krishna, I was very happy to take your questions and comments now. Okay. I hope you can hear me. My computer is really freezing up, but as long as we can hear, we're okay.
Yes, bro, your picture is frozen, so.
Okay, here, let me. All right.
So.
Okay. Can you hear me and see me? And
you can hear you and see you. I think your picture is frozen only for me or for everyone.
Frozen on my end as well, but
Yeah,
okay.
It's frozen everywhere.
Okay, but as long as we can hear you, that's fine.
Yeah.
So there's a question online, Prabhu. Did you see in chat?
Well, I can hardly navigate now because I'm all locked up. So just
okay.
You can
let me read that is question from Ram Girdhari Prabhu from Navi Mumbai, India. Dandavat Prabhu. Out of 4 points of Varnashram, the 4th point, Devi Varnashram principle, according to time, candidates, and place. What are those principles? Did we lose? Hello, Krishna Prabhu.
Krishna Prabhuji, looks like okay, his connection is freeze or something like that.
Hope he comes back.
He's trying to reconnect, so
Okay,
just give it a minute. I think it'll work.
I hope so.
Hopefully it will work.
I said we have weather problem. Looks like they have problem in Tucson too.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be able to log on. Maybe Manju, did he
No,
say-
maybe you can try the phone connection. I mean, the one tap phone instead of video. If just phone can help to log in. I think he's in US, right?
Yeah, he's in Tucson, Arizona.
So if you have somebody can just log into his phone and get him online, should be okay. Or he can himself log into.
Manji, you have phone? His phone?
No, but I sent him all the info, so it's in his email, so he has it.
He's calling me now.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hello? Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hello? 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 Yes, bro. Okay, I can hear you. But you cannot log in again? Yeah. No, I can. We don't hear you on Zoom. You're not on Zoom at all, Prabhu. Maybe you can you connect on Zoom by the phone instead of your computer.
Tell him there's phone numbers in the email invitation I sent him. There'll be phone numbers. He can call in on one.
Manjari is saying that you have the phone numbers on the invitation. You can, one of those phone numbers you can call in. Manjari, Prabhu said that they needed some information when he tried to log in the phone.
It should all be there. The meeting ID and everything's in the email.
In the email, there's meeting ID and
Everything, meeting ID, passwords, all there.
meeting ID and password is on the email, Prabhu.
If he
Okay.
opens the email on his mobile phone, there's a thing that says one tap mobile and it'll connect him.
It said, Manjari said that, Prabhu, there's a, you open your email, there says one tap, what? One tap
He'll-
mobile.
Yeah, so if he opens the email on his cell phone, he'll be able to click one tap mobile and he won't have to type anything. It'll connect him automatically.
When you open your email, it says one tab mobile that you don't have to put any other information. You can connect to the Zoom. Okay, thank you, bro. Hare Krishna. Okay, so Ram Gidai, bro, you can ask your question yourself instead of him reading from the. I hope he comes back soon. So we missed you 2 days, Prabhu. And congratulations for being now your grand uncle or something.
I mean, something like that.
Something like that. Okay.
One more generation got added.
Yes, one more generation. Okay. 8:45 already.
I mean, this conversation on Varnashrama and Daiva Varnashrama is pretty intriguing and important, because here we have seen how much Srila Prabhupada wanted this. So I was, I'm always, in the quest of knowing more details, because Srila Prabhupada had expressed his desires and also given some framework, but there are a few things that need explanations or clarification what actually Srila Prabhupada meant vis-a-vis what is happening currently amongst our fellow devotees.
That was
So
Prabhupada.
everything is, yeah, Prabhuji has joined.
He joined? I don't think so. No, he's not. Did he come on?
Yeah, he's in here. It's just loading
Okay.
into the audio. It'll
Okay.
yeah. See, there he
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Okay, here he is.
There's no audio connection though. There's only video.
Yes, but it's connecting. I think it'll just be a minute.
There it is. There you are.
All right. So can you hear me?
Yes, so we can hear you.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, I see your picture. You have a bright lavender sweater or something. Okay. Yeah, that's you. All right. We're back in action.
Ramgidari Prabhu, please ask your question.
Yeah. So Dhanwad Prabhuji, all goes through your service. Wonderful book hearing you. The 4 points of Varnashram that you mentioned, the fourth point saying that Daiva Varnashram principles according to time, candidates, and place. I'm just wondering if the principles are already delineated, or what Srila Prabhupada meant by Daiva Varnashram principles according to time, candidates, and place.
Okay, hang on. Let me just. Where is the? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, those principles. Let me see if I can bring up my my computer is frozen. Yes, so there was local economy. Yeah, the plain living and high thinking, the local economy. I'm just trying to remember them myself here. Anyway, that's the one you want to focus on. The according to time, country, candidate, or all of them.
Yeah, no, I want to focus on the fourth one, because the first one is Krishna being the supreme personality of God. And second being the, the local, according to agricultural farm-based economy. And the fourth one, is a point that I want to have a clarification on what principle Srila Prabhupada meant according to time, candidates, and country.
Okay.
Because when you leave it like a principle statement, then it always have got some gray area where people may assume different principles according to their convenience. So did Srila Prabhupada clarify it at some place, or it's left for us to introspect?
I'm just going to have to answer you, since I don't have my notes. I'm just going to have to answer you in a general way. Time, country, candidate. Yeah. So the way Prabhupada introduced Krishna consciousness all over the world, it was different according to where he was and what stage of development the country was, what stage the people were. And I've already described in other places how my favorite purports in this regard are Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 23, text 105, and Srimad Bhagavatam, canto 4, chapter 8, text 54. Prabhupada talks about this. that the way you spread Krishna consciousness. So I'm using Krishna consciousness now as a synonym for Daivi Varnashram, because that's what Prabhupada was doing. He was interested in the kind of Varnashram that kept Vedic principles intact, but could be applied practically in the Kali Yuga. And even then, it wasn't the same. Wherever he traveled, he did adapt those principles to the particular audience. One size does not fit all. So Prabhupada, as I like to say, could be very traditional, like in India, and he could be very contemporary, as in the West. And he wasn't. It was very practical, what he was doing, because the main thing is to be Krishna conscious. And he writes about this in the purports to those verses I just cited. That it's very specific. So, did you want to, based on what I just said, did you want to ask me anything more about that, or what?
Yeah. So basically, it is like it'll be a nested question where if somebody is, I belong to America, but I'm coming and living in India, so I will always assume that according to America, Prabhupada said that certain principles are okay. So time, a candidate and a country. So if it applies to a candidate himself that I belong to so and so country, so I am having an allowance to do certain principles, then that brings in some confusion, isn't it?
Principles are universal. Principles are like laws. They're just realities. But applications of principles, that's what we call details. And details are relative. Principles are absolute. They're universal. Like a principle could be chanting Hare Krishna. For Kali Yuga, that's the Dharma. That's what we just celebrated Gaur Purnima. And so that was what Prabhupada or Lord Chaitanya came to popularize, the Yuga Dharma, which is chanting Hare Krishna. So the detail would be, it's up to each acharya how much to chant Hare Krishna. So for ISKCON, for Prabhupada's ISKCON Sangha, if you will, his society, he tried different things, as I mentioned previously. He was wondering how much we could do, so he started high, 64, he was suggesting, and then the devotees couldn't even imagine that. Then he said 32, and they couldn't imagine that. And finally, he said, okay, 16, rock bottom, no less. So, because Prabhupada's movement is a very active movement, it's not a movement that places, ritual above spreading, above preaching, above Sankirtan. So he saw how, in the modern age, especially in the West, people were very passionate. They had to do something. They couldn't just sit like that guy, Raphael, in 1966. Now that was the first summer, and Prabhupada was, he was just establishing a little, renunciate commune, if you will, like an urban commune. And it was only men in the beginning. And one lady did come, Jadharani. She was the first lady. So Raphael, he was there in the beginning, and Prabhupada was, trying to put a head back in society and get people to understand what he was saying and inspire them to chant and follow principles. But Raphael, he just couldn't handle it. He couldn't just do chanting, and he wanted to engage the karma that he had inherited. Said his father was a boxer, and so now here we are, half a century later, and there's more room for people in different walks of life. Or as Prabhupada would say, in the village. We can't show it all in the city, but we can show it in the village. We can show it a broader range of occupations. So So the details are the applications of the principles. So let me just get back to you, and maybe you want to, what's confusing now? Are you still there?
Yes, Prabhuji, I'm fine with this explanation. Probably maybe others may have some questions. So I would definitely have more questions on this, but the limit of time. So maybe next week or sometime in person, I'll talk to you.
Okay, it was very narrow in the beginning because Prabhupada's his agenda, if you will, was to put a head back in society. So he was just trying to train everybody to be Brahmins. That's what he was telling us. But it worked up to a point. But after a while, you know, as the saying goes, water seeks its own level. So everybody had different natures, and unless they could engage their natures, then they were having a hard time. So Prabhupada began to broaden it, and therefore when he finally was giving his final application of Varnashram for ISKCON, he says, "We need to do this because you need it. You can't even you can't maintain your Krishna consciousness. Why are so many falling down? Because they're not being engaged according to their nature." So it's very important that our society be able to do that. You know, especially now, here we are 50 years on, we have to broaden and deepen and grow up and be able to engage different kinds of people. And we are, but it could be a lot better. Okay, we'll see if anybody else has any questions. How about our Knoxville people? Are our Knoxville people here?
No, they're not, bro. But
Okay.
my question was that, bro, that is the Shivram Maharaj book addresses those questions what Ram Gidari Prabhu is asking, or do you?
Oh, that book I mentioned, yeah, the Varnashram Compendium. Yeah, he does. Yeah, it's only his first volume, but he does have that chapter 30, determining one's varna, and I think I presented that in lesson 7. Yeah, I presented highlights of that. So it's been very challenging for us because Prabhupada started the movement in a certain way, and still many of our leaders are kind of, we're relics, kind of holdovers from that. So although it's very politically correct to be pro-Varnashram, but it's very challenging to know how to do that. So most people, they haven't even touched it. But yeah, Shiva Ramswamy is at least trying, both by his writing and also by his community in Hungary. Anyway, because this, like Prabhupada said to Kotovsky, in Moscow in June 71, it's there anyway, it's sleeping. So even in America, a crazy place like America, it's people are naturally working according to their tendencies toward work. And a very small percentage of people will be, priests and teachers, the so-called Brahmins of the society. And a greater percentage will be administrators and warriors. And a still greater percentage will be, business people. And then most of the people will be assistants to those three classes called Shudra Varna, the laborer class. So it's like Nitai Gursinda Prabhu, are you retired now?
Not yet, bro. I don't know anything else to do. So
okay, good.
So we can probably next week we'll have a Girdhari Maharaj on Monday. He's doing something there in Philippines, so we'll find out what he's doing.
Okay, good.
The next
So
week,
are you still working are you working in a hospital, or what do you do?
I have a hospital and my practice. Yeah, both one.
Okay.
Yeah, so next week we
so
can. Yes, but
yeah, you're in the front lines. So are you twice? Do you have I'm double vaccinated. How about you?
We got it, Maharaj. Yes, Prabhu, we got it. I think I got my end of December and January 1st week of January, something like that. I got vaccinated. But I've
All right.
already had my COVID, so I'm done triple.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
No, you're not a long hauler. No lingering long effects, side effects.
It did not. It took about 6 to 8 weeks for first time, and then after vaccination, no problem.
Okay, that's good. I'm hearing about these long haulers who still
Yeah,
suffer
yeah.
effects months later. So, okay. It's after the hour, but if there's any more questions and comments, yeah, next lesson is to love is to cooperate. It's very intense because it's addressing what's really hard to come by, unity and diversity. We have so much diversity and we need more unity. And I try to give some tips, some clues on how to find that. So.
And that could be
Hare
helpful
Krishna.
too. Yeah, who has the question? Yeah, okay.
Okay, question.
Quick question, very dumb question. But Nitai Gaur Sundar Prabhu says no question is dumb, so I'm asking.
That's right.
Now,
That's right.
You mentioned that Varnashram system is as close to as how Krishna lives, right? So I started drawing parallels. Okay, I understand there's village life and cows and wonderful animals and everything in Goloka, but I hope there's no designations like Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras and all in Goloka. Dumb question, but I got this.
No, it's not that people are designated. When you do see, yeah, there's different kinds of people, but it's not. See, Varnashram is for the material world to organize the material world in such a way that people will worship Krishna by their work and attain him. Now, in the spiritual world also, there's different kinds of devotees, but it's not that they're practicing. They've attained perfection, so they're spontaneous and they're not. They're always increasing, sure, in their service to Krishna, but it's a kind of transcendent Varnashram. It's not a kind of the Varnashram in the material world where you have to learn what your Varna is, and you're there. According to Krishna's pleasure, you're serving him in different ways. Krishna loves variety. He's the only person who can relate to all of his infinite parts and parcels, living entities, in an infinite number of ways, and he enjoys all of it. He had just a pure devotee, his dear devotee Bhishma Devi, he had him opposing him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra in intense warfare. That's Veera Rasa, the rasa of chivalry. Yeah. So and then Bhishma Devi attained that place where Parthasarathi is. That's how he saw Krishna in his four-armed form, and he fixed his mind in that form. Yeah. So there is variety. There's natural. There's variety because that's what Krishna likes. Like we say, variety is the spice of life. Well, that's true because it's true in the spiritual world. But here, the variety is very limited, and there's always some, some inconvenience or misery mixed in. Like Krishna says in the Gita, every endeavor is covered by some sort of fault, like that. But it's not like that in the spiritual world. Everybody is in full bloom, pure love of God, and that's where we want to go. But Varnashram is a way for us to get there. The Prabhupada calls it man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Is that all right, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hi.
We can have our Narsinga prayer and
Okay.
Okay.
Jai.
Okay. Abhishek, you want to announce?
Me? Myself?
Did that?
Call on Riddhima and Nahana.
Oh.
You want me to sing or you want somebody else sing?
No, Prabhu, we have some young little ladies that sing the.
Oh, right. I
The
remember
young
that.
little lady, they're mature, wonderful ladies.
Mature for you, young for me.
Okay.
Yes. So we'll hear this. I'll hear the song and then I'll leave you. I'll take your leave.
Perfect. Thank you,
Prabhu.
All right,
All
ladies,
right.
it's your turn. The Shinga prayer.
Yeah, we're ready. Yeah. Namaste Narasingaya. Namaste Narasingaya. Pranadinadedaine. Pranadinadedaine. Hiranyakashipurvaksha. Hiranyakashipurvaksha. Shilatankanakalai. Shilatankanakalai. Ito Narsinga Parato Narsinga. Ito Narsinga Parato Narsinga. Yato yato yamitato Narsinga. Yato yato yamitato Narsinga. Bahe Narsinga Ridaye Narsinga. Bahe Narsinga Ridaye Narsinga. Narasinga Madam Sharanam Prapade. Narasinga Madam Sharanam Prapade. Tava Kare Kamalavare Nakamatputa Shringa. Lalita Hiranyakashipu Tanubringa. Keshavadita Narari Rupa. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Tava Kare Kamalavare Nakamaruta Shringa. Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanuringa. Keshavadita Narari Rupa. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Jagadisha Hare. Jaya Narasimhadev. 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 Jaya Pranamara. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Jaya Jaya Gurudev. 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. Narasimha Bhagwan ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, ladies. So just a reminder, tomorrow's program is back to its original time, or regular time of 8 p.m. So with that, if everyone will go ahead and unmute themselves, we'll recite the Vaishnava Pranam prayer.
Vanchakalpatrupeya Shatrupa Shindubhaya Vachapati Tanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank you, Suresh Prabhu.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Leela Krishna Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.